It was a Monday night in the spring of 2021. I'd just gotten out of work at 8 p.m., and after a long day, all I wanted to do was hop online and play some games with my buddies. I had gotten divorced a few months earlier, and the empty house was still something I hadn't quite adjusted to. Gaming with my friends was a way to kill time and keep my mind off things, and honestly, I didn't mind it. There had been warnings about a big thunderstorm rolling in that night, flash flood warnings and all that, but where I live, they send out those alerts every time it rains, so I wasn't too worried. But around 11 p.m., while I was in the middle of a game, a huge gust of wind slammed against my window, and the whole house shook. I ripped my headset halfway off, hearing the rain pouring down and the house creaking and swaying. I turned back to my screen to tell my friends what was going on, but before I could speak, the lights flickered and my PC shut down. Everything went dark for a split second, then came back on. I saw I was still in the Discord call, so I asked if they could hear me, but before I got an answer, everything cut out again. The lights went out, and the whole house was engulfed in darkness. I couldn't even see my hands in front of me. I fumbled around for my phone, turned on the light, and got up. Frustrated, I walked downstairs and peered through the front window. The rain was pouring down, and it was hard to tell if anyone else had lost power since it was already so late. I quickly sent a message in the group chat to let my friends know I probably wouldn't be on for the rest of the night. I grabbed a battery pack from the basement to plug in a few lamps, just so I could get some light in the house. As I made my way back upstairs, though, I thought I heard something behind me. At first, I figured it was just the storm making the house creak, but the wind picked up just as I turned around, so I didn't think much of it. I hooked up the lamp, sat on the couch, and used my phone's data to scroll through YouTube. About an hour passed before I got curious and decided to open the front door to look outside. The rain was still coming down in sheets, but the houses across the street had lights on, which made me question why mine had gone out. I looked up the power outage information for my area, but couldn't find anything substantial. Then, just as I was about to go back inside, I got a text from an unknown number. It claimed there were downed power lines in the area and to expect power outages. That seemed odd. I didn't recognize the number, and it didn't come from the usual utility companies, but I didn't think much of it at the time. As I walked back into the living room, trying to get back into my routine, I heard something from the other side of the house, a sound like a footstep on the wooden steps leading down to the basement. I froze, recognizing that sound immediately. I stood up slowly and tiptoed over to the hallway, shining my phone light toward the basement. The door was wide open. There was no way I'd left it like that. I stood at the top of the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest, but I wasn't about to go down there in the dark with no power. I shut the door, telling myself it was probably just my imagination playing tricks on me. Then came the footsteps, heavy, running up the stairs from the basement. I wasn't imagining it. I rushed to the door and threw my weight against it, just as the pounding started on the other side. The person, or whatever it was trying to force the door open. I could hear them slamming their body against it, and the whole house shook. I panicked and grabbed my phone, dialing 911. The moment I did, everything stopped. The footsteps retreated, and I heard them going back down the stairs. I didn't hesitate. I bolted to my car and drove off, watching the house from the other side of the street. I waited for 10 minutes but didn't see anything. The police arrived soon after, and, after a quick search, they found no sign of anyone inside. The officers confirmed the back door was open, but they didn't find anything else unusual. Later, I discovered that the text I had received about the power outage wasn't from any utility company. It had come from a personal phone. Whoever had done this had specifically targeted me. They had been tracking my movements, waiting for me to step outside so they could shut off the power and make me think it was a random outage. To this day, I have no idea who that person was or what they wanted. A few months later, I decided to go camping with my best friend, Henry. We'd done a few trips before, but nothing too far out. This time, we were going to a more secluded spot, deep in the forest. It was a 4-hour hike, and when we arrived, we found a small campsite on a hill that overlooked the forest. It was secluded, with no one else around, and from the looks of it, no one had been there in a while. While Henry finished setting up, I went up to the overlook to enjoy the view. That's when I saw them, a group of people moving through the trees below. They were far off, hidden in the dense woods, but I could make out 4 or 5 figures walking through the forest. I pointed it out to Henry, but by the time he came over, they were gone. We shrugged it off, figuring they were probably other campers or hikers, but the feeling of being watched lingered. As the night went on, the campfire crackled, and everything was calm. But then we heard something. Voices. Faint, like a group of people talking in the woods, far off but close enough to make us uneasy. The voices didn't move. They just stopped, suddenly. And then, out of nowhere, we heard footsteps. One set walking toward us. A man emerged from the darkness, wearing a red baseball cap and long black hair. He smiled widely as he approached. "Either of you know where the trail is around here?" he asked. I pointed in the direction of the trail, but something felt off. He hesitated when I asked about the others. "I didn't know anyone else was out here," he said with a nervous smile. We both knew he was lying. The voices we'd heard, they came from the same direction he had walked in. But before we could say anything more, he smiled again and disappeared down the trail. Henry and I were both shaken, and we spent the next 30 minutes talking about it around the fire, trying to make sense of what had happened. But it felt like we were being watched. Every rustle in the woods, every crack of a branch, made our hearts race. Finally, we decided to pack up and leave. But just as we were putting out the fire, a footstep echoed in the darkness behind us. We turned around, and there he was again. The same man with the red baseball cap, standing in the dark, staring at us with that same eerie smile. I fumbled for my flashlight and shone it on him. Panic set in, and I quickly turned it off. We sprinted down the trail, hearing footsteps chasing us through the woods, getting closer and closer. Eventually, they faded out, but we didn't stop running until we made it to the car. Both of us were shaking by the time we left. We didn't talk much on the way back, but neither of us could shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong out there. A few months later, in the spring of 2021, I had another strange experience. I was driving back home from college on a long road trip and decided to stop for the night at a small hotel I found after a long day of driving. It was in the middle of nowhere, down an old, barely lit road. The hotel was small and old, but I was exhausted and just wanted to crash. The lobby was eerily quiet, with no one else around. After a few minutes, a woman came out from the back to check me in. She gave me a room at the very end of the hall, and I settled in, too tired to unpack. I was lying on the sofa, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a knock at the door. It startled me, and I quickly opened it, but there was no one there. I stood there, confused, and listened for a moment. but the hotel was completely silent. Maybe it was for another room, I thought, and went back to bed. Around midnight, it happened again. A loud knock at the door. I got up, checked the hallway, and again, no one was there. This time, I went down to the front desk and told the woman about it. She seemed surprised and said I was the only guest staying that night. I went back to my room, locked the door, and tried to sleep. But as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I saw something move in the corner of the room. A figure, standing motionless, watching me. I jumped up, terrified, and rushed to the door. But before I could open it, I heard footsteps behind me, loud, fast, and getting closer. I bolted out of the room, down the hallway, and into the lobby. The woman at the desk saw me, but her eyes darted past me. The man who had been in my room was running toward us. He didn't get into a car or anything, he just sprinted off into the night. The police couldn't find much. There were only 2 working cameras at the hotel, one in the lobby and one outside, but neither showed anything useful. The only thing we knew for sure was that the man had slipped into my room while I was away and that he had been watching me. I left that hotel as fast as I could, and to this day, I don't know what he wanted or why he was there. It was the most terrifying experience of my life.